This is my 2006 Trailblazer 250. Just want to do a complete walk around of all the mods I've done to it. So let's start in the back. And repairs. I'll mention repairs I've done in the past. So I've had this 2006 since about 2009. And when I bought it, it was basically brand new. It didn't even have any dirt on it. So one thing I've done is replace this with I believe it's a 2008 Razor 800 rear shock spring. They're like 180 pounds, but they're a little bit shorter than stock. So this is a 1.5 inch spacer, and then I'm about 250 pounds right now. I've got it all the way on max. I've only ridden it once so far. Worked great, but I had it on the second. I had it in the middle notch. I think there's 5 notches. Now I've got it on the 5th notch. I've rebuilt this before. Actually, it was so beat up that when the bearing went out that I just replaced the whole housing and add new bearings and stuff. It's very easy to overfill that with grease, so use abundant caution. I did it a long time ago. Ended up basically, I got it too full of grease and noticed the seal was coming out over here. And what I did was I backed this screw out. I basically pulled this Zerk and basically let it run, and then I actually tried to suck some grease out. So it's got a slight vacuum of grease on it now. The other thing it has I believe the gearing I have on it is 11, chain needs to be tightened a little bit. It's 1140 or 1142, I can't quite remember. It's been a while. It was like, I last rode this, it's 2021 now, March 2021, but the last time I really rode it was probably 2012 or 13. It's kind of been sitting. This is a RK X-Ring chain. It's still good. It's almost 10 years old. It's been mostly out of the weather. It's been undercover. This has a HPD trail pipe on it that I got from Rick Ritter. With that, you basically add the pipe, change the main jet to whatever Rick says, and then add a different clutch spring. Transmission fluid, I run regular Polaris transmission fluid in there. Those always leak. I've rebuilt that. I basically pulled the case apart and resealed it once or twice already, although it's not leaking right now, knock on wood. This bushing went out in my pipe. It used to be rubber, and I've replaced it basically with a piece of wood, and you can see a little screw divot there. So there's a screw going through the wood and into here that keeps it centered, and then the zip tie kind of helps keep the whole thing tight, although this really keeps it tight, the spring. Let's see. Oh, tires. I've got Sun F 22-inch tires. This has enough power that I almost wish I had gotten 24-inch tires on the back, because it'd give me a little bit of a lift. On the front, I could have gotten the equivalent Sun Fs, but I went with Greenball GBC, and they're called the XC Master, and they're standard 23/710. You don't really want to go any wider than factory because there's basically no clearance between the tire and these tie rods. Let's see what else I got here. So I just put these on. I haven't ridden them yet. They are EPI. Let me see if I have the number. EPI. Here they are. These are the front springs. I actually had these on my 2013 Polaris Sportsmans. These are the heavy duty springs, so they're like 120 pound inch, 120 inch pound inch, something like that. Whereas the factories are like 55 to 80. I'll show you a factory next to it, and you can see how dinky the factory ones are. You can see how they've got this different spacing here. So these are progressive, so they're probably this is the 55 part, and then these other coils are there's a little bit wider apart. But you can see how much heavier duty the new springs are. They're not actually that much thicker when you measure it, but looking at them, they look a lot thicker, and they ride a lot better, and it corners a lot better. I added these lights. I'll try to include a link, but they're like night lights or something. They were like, I want to say $25 for the pair. The factory connection on these, at least the 2006, uses this standard. This is called a SAE. So what I did is I basically bought a Y SAE connector, and I basically connected these right into the factory. These lights only pull right at 3 amps. Whereas my understanding is this is a 55 watt, this factory one, so you're pulling less wattage than factory. I actually usually run one of these disconnected anyway, just because there's no, I usually use it as like a trail light basically. One of these is actually way brighter than this anyway, so, but I don't ride at night. I just use it as a trail light. Other things I've got, I just installed this Badland 3500 from Harbor Freight. I think this is a KFI mount. Let me show you where I mounted the actual circuitry box. I did a pretty clean install, just drilled a couple holes in the back of the plate. It's all covered from the weather. The ignition switch on that, they have a thing where you can wire this into the key ignition, but I just cut it and put a ring terminal on it and did it on the positive lead coming from the battery. That was the easiest way. On the front end, when I got this machine back out to start working on it to ride again, these bushings were not worn, but I rode it like around the yard half an hour or something, and these bushings were completely disintegrated. So I'm thinking the plastic that they used back then was not very good. I don't know if it needed ball joints or not, or they weren't too bad, but I went ahead and replaced them because I've heard stories of guys basically not being able to get them out later. So I went ahead and put EPI ball joints in. They're the only ones out there that I could find that were consistent quality. When I had the front end apart, I went ahead and basically hit these brake rotors with basically the brake pads and the brake rotors with a die grinder with a wire wheel brush, which is basically a super high speed drill, to basically bust all the rust and stuff off of them. So they work pretty good. Right now, I also had to replace the wheel bearings, which really shocked me because I've never ridden it in really water or mud or anything. Other things I've had to do a long time ago, 10 years ago, this fuel petcock leak, I had to replace it. I think I've got a slight exhaust leak right now, but I'm not goofing with that. I have an oil pump block off on this, so this is a single pull throttle cable. It's much easier to pull than the factory. That also pulls the oil pump, and I have a block off kit on here as well. Ooh, this is dirty. I haven't done anything in here in 8-10 years, something like that. There's my single pull throttle cable. I added a fuel filter right there in line. When you do the Rick's exhaust system, there's a little limiter inside here, so you take this off and there's a limiter, you pull that out. It has a unit, air filter. What else I have? You can see, I don't know if you can see down there, the oil block off kit. That's where the oil pump normally goes in. My starter doesn't work very well. I think the Bendix is broken in it, but it still starts right up, so I am not screwing with it. Let's see if it'll... See, the Bendix is screwed. Actually starts right up because I'm doing a video that it doesn't. I have ordered a belt for it because I plan on riding it as my main machine now, but I just haven't replaced it yet. Let me show you the wiring under here. Oh, I added this as well. This goes directly to the battery. I'll show you how that's kind of wired up. I originally got it up to basically run GPS off of it. Or sorry, my phone, or so I can run GPS and power it. That didn't work out too well. Oh, another nice thing about the lights, having those lights down there, is when you pull this off, you don't have to worry about disconnecting it. There's my winch wiring, pretty clean. This is all crap for the winch. It's amazing how complex those winches wiring harnesses are, how many different wires and crap they have on them. The other thing I did was I replaced this with this upper mount. On these ones, they're not greasable from the factory, so I basically drilled and tapped this. Actually, I didn't need to drill it, I don't think. It was very close to what it needed to be. I think I just tapped it with the correct threads. I think it's 1/4 by 28 or 1/4 by 24, something with fine threads for these grease zerks. You can look that up. These bolts are actually 1/4 inch. They're too small, but I need to replace them with 5/16. But this is a energy suspension bushing for like a car. And I think this is 7/8 if I remember correctly, but you can do some Googling and find that. What else have I done to this? These tie rod ends were worn. You can see them. You can see them move a little bit, but I didn't replace them because it was like $130. And one thing I don't quite know is there's actually a little bit of play when you do the steering wheel. This moves back and forth a little bit, so I almost wonder if I need to shim it with a washer on one side or something. You can see I've kind of bent that one in a little bit, but it didn't help. So I don't know what I'm going to do, if anything, there. I might just ride it and say hell with it. Might be just fine. These tires are definitely way better than factory. I have these on my Sportsman 500 that I sold. Okay, the big deal. Okay, so I got this. This is a ram ball mount. It's a camera mount, but I just have a bolt in there. You can see. So I can mount a camera there. I can run they make a SAE to USB adapter where I could power the camera off of that. Let's see what else. I have another ram mount here. This is for where I mount the phone or GPS. I don't use my real phone. I don't use my $500 phone. I have a $50 Android phone I use just in case I crash. Okay, so the other big thing I did is I have a battery shutoff switch, and this is a complete freaking disaster in here, it looks like. But I've got a battery shutoff switch, so the negative of the battery comes into this switch, and then the negative of this switch goes into the normal negative. This end right here on the top. This is normally what's connected to the battery. So what I did is you basically put that switch in between the negative, and you see these are crimped and soldered copper lug ends. They're 1/4 inch. These are basically pieces. I bought a jumper cable at Harbor Freight and used the 8-gauge wire to basically make these connections. So I also wired in there. A reason it's so kind of messy is I also wired in the negative for the winch. So basically this turns off literally everything. When I turn the power off there, the winch won't work or anything. So I have the negative to the winch coming into this as well. And there's the winch breaker box. And then this is just a battery tender. And that's what this is. And I guess it's somewhat complex. I believe the battery tender, this is a regular, called a battery tender dongle. It's this wire and this wire here. And it comes here, and I wide it. And the back one comes here, so I can basically either power the camera, or I've got another wire that goes forward, and this is the one that actually connects to the 12-volt power thing on the side. And what I did was I put I think I put a 15 or 20 amp fuse in there so that this can easily run an air pump. So it didn't really work well for the socket, it didn't work well for powering the phone because it jostles so much that the USB charger wants to come out. So, because the headlights are SAE and I always run them, I did a Y off of them so I can power another one of those USB to SAE adapters in here and run a cable up through here and run the phone off of it. I need to come up with a little bit cleaner way to do that, but that's what I'm doing for right now. Is the headlights are always running anyway, so I just power that adapter that powers my phone. I think that's about it. There's a soft shackle. Somebody turned me onto those. Synthetic winch line I upgraded, and when I installed the synthetic winch line, I cut 12 feet off of it, so I have a nice little tow strap for it as well. But that's it. When I put the new springs on the front, it lifted about 2 inches. So I might see if I can find something in the back, like maybe they make a lift kit for a scrambler or something that will lift the back 2 inches. We'll see. But in the meantime, I don't know. It seems to ride pretty good, but I haven't ridden it for a whole day, so we'll see. All right, take care.